What is the secret room behind Mount Rushmore? Why is it there? Did the sculptor know something that we don't? Follow me down the rabbit hole to find out. Hello, friends, and welcome back to The Rabbit Hole. I'm your host, Dani, and today we are covering Mount Rushmore. I don't know if this is necessarily a conspiracy theory as much as, maybe just history, but I feel like all history that involves our government in some way, shape, or form can be a conspiracy theory, so here we are. I want to just put out a reminder that I am taking a week off. So after Memorial Day weekend, June 1st, I will not be putting out an episode. That's 2 weeks from today. So I really apologize. I'm not trying to skip out on anything, but sometimes you just need a good vacation. So we're going out to the lake and we're going to hang out. I will be back the following week with a brand new episode after that. But I hope that you guys really enjoy this episode. So let's get into some history about Mount Rushmore. If you didn't know, it's in South Dakota. Let's start there. In the early 1920s, South Dakota was looking for more tourism, and if you've ever been to South Dakota, there's really not a lot going on out there. They do have Sturgis, and they have Bike Week, and they have Mount Rushmore. I don't think there's a whole lot outside of that. It's farm country. But they wanted a way to attract more tourists, visitors, to their state. So the state historian, Dwayne Robinson, reached out to to a sculptor who had worked on Stone Mountain, and his name was Gutzon Borglum. If you don't know about Stone Mountain, which I didn't know that Stone Mountain was built before Mount Rushmore, so a little tidbit there, but Stone Mountain is in Georgia, and it is called the Mount Rushmore of the South, and it features the Confederate President Jefferson Davis, General Robert E. Lee, and General Thomas J. Stonewall Jackson. And they are all carved into this mountainside similar to Mount Rushmore, although they have horses and things along with that. So if you want to go down there and you want to see Mount Rushmore of the South with the Civil War generals and president of the South, then that's really cool too. But today we're talking about Mount Rushmore. So the construction lasted 14 years from 1927 to 1941. And at the time, it cost almost $1 million to complete, which today would be about $17.25 million. I don't know if that accounts for today's actual inflation, because inflation's crazy right now. But, just for general inflation. About 17.5, I would say. They removed 450,000 tons of granite from the monument, mostly by dynamite. 90% of it was by dynamite, which makes sense because that's a lot of granite and it's hard to move. Borglum never got to actually see the completed project because he did die in 1941. He just died earlier in the year than when the monument was completed. His son, Lincoln, actually finished the project for him, and there's a small statue of Gutzon Borglum at the bottom of the monument, so you can see it. More than 400 people worked on this monument, and not one person died, which is an incredible feat when you're talking about the late 20s to the early 40s of the 1900s. Their safety precautions were not that extreme, and these workers had to walk up 500 stairs every single day just to get to work. So you're saying they have to walk up all these stairs, and they get in these little seats basically that are attached by cables, and they go down the side of this mountain to blast things off with dynamite, and nobody died. So that's actually very impressive. I wanted to kind of harp on that a little bit because I can't even believe it. During its 14-year production, Mount Rushmore's plan went through 9 different changes, including the addition of the Hall of Records and the decision to forego carving bodies below each of the president's head. And each of the president's heads are 60 feet tall. So if you're curious about what 60 feet looks like, it's about 6 stories. It's like a 6-story building. How were the 4 presidents selected? Well, I'm glad you asked. George Washington was chosen because he was the founder of the country. So he was our first president. That makes sense. Thomas Jefferson for signing the Louisiana Purchase and for authorizing the Declaration of Independence. Abraham Lincoln for his leadership in the Civil War. And Theodore Roosevelt for moving the country forward in both conservation and industrial development. And actually now Mount Rushmore sees about 3 million visitors a year. So that's pretty good. I mean, they definitely succeeded in getting more visitors to the state. So now we're going to kind of get into the sculptor. So who is Gutzon Borglum? So he is, or was, I guess he's dead now. He was an Idaho-born Dutch man who was a great sculptor. He was actually kind of a genius. He had this larger-than-life attitude about him, which would cause him issues throughout his career, such as being fired from the Stone Mountain Project. So he definitely was a sculptor on the Stone Mountain Project, but he didn't stay on that project for long because I don't know exactly what happened, but he ended up destroying the models on his way out, like after being fired, and there was a warrant issued for his arrest. So he wasn't like a peaceful kind of like quiet guy, quiet little artist. No, he was this big guy, and he was obsessed with ancient wonders of the world, such as the pyramids of Giza and Stonehenge, which actually play a huge part in the conspiracy theory here. So, but he was also a genius, like I said.
Did you know that over 40% of Americans have a hard time swallowing pills? So when it's time to take your vitamins, large capsules and pills are out of the question. We know that gummy vitamins exist, but they're full of sugar, they get stuck in your teeth, and they only contain a fraction of the nutrients you need. Luckily, Easy Melts has discovered the ultimate vitamin sweet spot. Vitamins that melt in your mouth, taste like a treat, and are packed with nutrients ready for absorption, all without an ounce of sugar. For a limited time, Easy Melts is giving listeners a free 3-month supply of vitamin D3 with their first purchase. To claim your free D3 vitamins, visit try.easymelts.com/spring24. That's melts.com/spring24. Say goodbye to the old way of taking your vitamins and say hello to the easy way. Menopausal and perimenopausal women, listen up. It's time to take control of your health and comfort, and Winona is here to help. Winona is a telemedicine company for menopause care who believes that your symptoms are real, important, and deserve to be taken seriously. And for many women, this starts with hormone replacement therapy. Winona's HRT is made with plant-based, bioidentical hormones rather than synthetic ones, so it better aligns with your body to offer relief from hot flashes, weight gain, and other uncomfortable symptoms. 80% of women who use Winona find relief within just 90 days. So, what are you waiting for? Get started today. Visit buywinona.com today to start your free visit. With free shipping and the ability to pause or cancel at any time, your path to wellness has zero obligations. Use code SPRING24 at buywinona.com for 25% off your first treatment plan. That's BYWINONA.com for 25% off. Winona. Menopause care made easy.
A monument of this size really hadn't been built. I mean, Stone Mountain had been built, but like this was a whole different ball game. And so he had to create the tools that were used in this, or like modify already made tools. Like they had to really be creative in how they were going to build this monument. But also, you're thinking like they're building this giant monument on the side of a mountain, and all these guys are really up close. Like, how do they know exactly where to blast and what to do? Like, he was a genius when it came to these sculptors. But let's talk about Borglum's plan here. So, behind President Lincoln's brow on the Mount Rushmore monument, there is a door. It's an 18-foot door that leads to a huge open hallway. This hallway is like 75 feet long, 35-foot ceilings. This is huge. And Borglum wanted this to be the Hall of Records. He envisioned like all the important history of America to be kept in this room for future civilizations or like otherworldly visitors. And the reason like he kept thinking about this is because we're going to go back to Stonehenge and the pyramids multiple times. He kept thinking like, obviously otherworldly visitors have come before, because we can't explain Stonehenge, we can't explain the pyramids, we can't explain like how are they built, like what's going on. And there's so many questions about these still, and he just had this idea that these visitors would come back to our world again, but also future civilizations, meaning like after America's come and gone, like years and years and years, like thousands and thousands of years in the future, that Mount Rushmore is still there, and people don't really know, like about our civilization, about why we built Mount Rushmore. So he wanted all that history of America to be in there. He wanted things like the Declaration of Independence, and he also wanted smaller sculptures of like important people in history, such as like Thomas Edison, which in my opinion, it shouldn't be him, but there's a whole conspiracy behind that we'll definitely get into because, yeah, he's kind of a thief. Anyway, doesn't matter. At the time, when they were building this, Edison was a huge name, and he wanted these sculptures of really prominent, important members of our history to be put in this Hall of Records, and that's what it would be. It would be a record of our time on this earth and of our time as a civilization. And so that's kind of, he kept imagining all these things. The reason he wanted this hallway, and potentially even more hallways, he kind of wanted this to be like a giant, huge, like basically like a museum up behind the monument. And he envisioned this grand staircase coming all the way up, and everyone would be able to go into this Hall of Records. They'd be able to see all these things, basically like a huge museum, but it would stay there forever, and it would be in this granite, so that way it couldn't go away, and it would always be there. But the pyramids have these hallways and these secret passages and all these secret things that nobody knows about, and they had to go in. They discovered all this information, all this history of the pyramids and all the Egyptians at the time. And so that's kind of his thought process, was like, oh, well, if the Egyptians did it, we could do it. But poor Borglum, he didn't really get what he wanted. First of all, he died before it could be finished. Secondly, they kind of struggled with funding. So they got a lot of funding from Congress, but they also got a lot of funding from like private donors. But by 1941, World War II was breaking out, and all the funding just went away. They completely nixed the rest of the project. They said, finish the president's heads, be done. We're not doing this Hall of Records. We're not doing this grand staircase. We're not doing all this. We're just doing this giant monument. You're basically done. Just finish the job. And so that's what they did. But also, he wanted this Hall of Records because Stonehenge leaves us with a lot of questions. There's a lot of questions about Stonehenge that are completely unanswered. And people are always asking questions, and we have some answers. Like, I went to a museum and I saw this exhibit about Stonehenge, and we got a lot of answers in this exhibit about the little stones that are all around the outside, like around the big stones, but we still don't really have very many answers about how those stones got stacked the way they did, and how they even got to where they're at, and what the purpose is. And Borglum didn't want all those questions for when future civilizations, which he's thinking like us looking back on Stonehenge kind of situation, that people would be asking, why are these people's heads on the side of a mountain? Who are they? They obviously have to be important, but who are they, right? And so he wanted a biography of the presidents. He wanted like an explanation why they're on the side of this mountain. And actually, Borglum's daughter kind of saw that his vision came to light. So Borglum's daughter was granted access to the hall and buried a time capsule there. And apparently it contains America's history up till 1941 and the biographies of the 4 featured presidents and Borglum himself, because she thought it was very important that like his vision came to life, and he was dead, so she was going to help him. His son finished the sculpting, and his daughter put this time capsule in the hall. But still to this day, nobody has, it's not open to the public. People don't go into this hall. It's not really something that's accessible. Plus, there's no grand staircase up there, so I don't know how people are getting up there. I mean, we have planes and different things, but I'm just saying. So, of course, the project was never fully finished to Borglum's full vision because of the World War II efforts and because he died. So there wasn't really anybody to fight for what he wanted. His kids did the best they could. There is I don't know if it's a hall or what. I went to see Mount Rushmore one time, but like the museum or whatever is at the bottom. It was closed, so I don't really know. Maybe it's just a gift shop. But there is like a building that you can go inside, and there's probably some history behind Mount Rushmore and a gift shop and stuff. And you can walk out on this platform and look up at Mount Rushmore. And it's really cool. I feel like in movies they make it look bigger than it is because you don't realize how many mountains, like how big the mountains are around it. But it is said that the actual Declaration of Independence is stored in the hall, along with who knows how many other treasures. There could be lots of important documents that are actually stored in the hall, but because nobody has access to it, I mean, it's kind of genius because nobody would think to go into this hall behind Mount Rushmore to look for actual important documents that should be contained, and should show the history of our country. So maybe Borglum's vision did come to life and we just don't know about it. But yeah, today's episode was a little short. I apologize for that, guys. I hope you liked it. If you've seen National Treasure 2, then you've gotten a little taste of this. They do, a decent job in National Treasure. It's one of my favorite movies. But of course it is, because there's conspiracy theories all over it. So I hope that this gives you a little more insight into Mount Rushmore. And I hope that you guys go and visit Mount Rushmore. It's really neat. So if you ever get a chance, go out to South Dakota and visit. But like I said, guys, I will be missing you in 2 weeks. But next week, you do get a whole new episode from me. So I'm pretty excited about that. And until then, my friends, stay skeptical, and I will see you all next week. The Rabbit Hole is an independent podcast with everything you hear done by me, Dani Mercy. We thrive on listeners like you. If you like what you're hearing, please leave us a rating or review wherever you are listening. Follow us on Instagram at rabbit.holepodcast. Special thank you to Zakar Valaha Music for our intro.